Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's installment of the Marin Symphony at Home. My guest this week is actually celebrating 10 years now as principal horn of the Marin Symphony, Darby Hinshaw. And as you'll see, he's a man of great talent and interest. And it's my pleasure to welcome him from his home in San Diego, in fact. Good morning, Darby. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, you are living in San Diego because your other hat is assistant principal of the San Diego Symphony, but you've been with us for 10 years now.
Yeah, it's the audition for Marin was the last audition that I took before my San Diego audition, and it was really funny. I remember kind of being very frantic at that audition because I had just gone on a San Francisco tour, and just kind of trying to practice with tour chops, and had just gone on that tour following my honeymoon, and kind of walking out of that audition thinking I'm probably going to win the next one also.
Nice, kind of confident. There's a real horn player's confidence there.
Well, we have to put that mask on because the instrument is always trying to embarrass us so much.
It is one of, I mean, it's weird to think of some instruments being harder than other, but let's put it this way, that certainly the position of principal horn is one of the more pressured principal positions in the orchestra. I think that's fair to say, and most or all orchestral players would acknowledge that.
Yeah, it's really easy to kind of fall into that vortex that pressure creates, and kind of maybe not always respond to it in a constructive way, and it's easy to get thrown by it, easy to get pulled out of your center, and your it's easy to have that pressure become unmanageable.
Yep.
But I've always tried to kind of approach it as this is also the most fun position in the orchestra, and I want everyone around me to have fun also. So that's kind of always been my guiding principle when I sit in that chair.
Sounds like a very healthy guiding principle as well.
I mean, what choice do we have? Otherwise, it's completely destructive.
Exactly. What drew you to the horn in the first place? Did you choose it? Did it choose you?
Circumstance kind of chose it for me. I went to AP Giannini Middle School in San Francisco, and Gary Piccini, the band director there, had gotten this piece of advice from a horn player. I'm not sure what horn player told him this. I was playing the flute in 6th grade, and someone told him to convert flute players instead of trumpet players. And I don't really know why that piece of advice was given or why he took it, but that he had a lot of success with it. Not all brass instruments are created equal in terms of the way that the air and the inside of the mouth and the embouchure and the mouthpiece all interact. And for flute players, like my wife is a flute player, and she can make a very good sound on the horn naturally using the same setup.
It seems so illogical, but I guess there must be something to it.
Yeah. So, halfway through 6th grade, my band director came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to try playing the horn?" And I said, "That sounds really fun." And I went home and I told my mom, "Hey, band director wants me to play the horn." She says, "We live in a 2-story flat in San Francisco. That's going to be too loud. It's going to bother the neighbors." I was 12. I latched onto it and I wanted to do it. And so as a joke, this was maybe around, this is in the middle of the Christmas shopping season. So she bought this ornament of basically a little post horn, and said, "If you could play a scale on this, you can play the horn." So I have this little Christmas tree ornament that I'm trying to buzz into and trying to make a sound on, and eventually I'm playing something that kind of sounds sort of like a scale on it, and she just gives up and says, okay, fine. So by this point, we'd worked our way through the school year to like April. So I go in and I tell my band director, "Yeah, I finally talked my mom into it." He says, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." She says, "I can play the horn now." And he says, "It's April. It's almost the end of the year. The end of the year concert's 6 weeks away." Okay, give it a try. So he gives me the instrument and sends me back in the practice room in the back office of the band room, and says, "Okay, here's where middle C is on the horn. Okay, here's the book. Go." Okay. So, you know, back then the San Francisco public school system had this summer music workshop that they did for 6 weeks every summer. It was an intensive band, orchestra, all sorts of other programs. Um, and at that program that summer, I met my first teacher, who was an old freelancer from Philly who studied with Mason Jones and who was principal horn of the Philadelphia Orchestra for a long time. And I wound up getting a really good start through him and through that program, just playing every day over the summer, and kind of just kept going with it.
So it was an immediate connection. Did you feel that I don't want to make comparison shopping here, but did you feel that it was a more natural fit for you than the flute had been up until that point?
Oh, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Yeah. It felt right. It sounded right. It was the thing that I wanted to do. You know, I forget what film it was, but there was some film by Universal, and you know, all the Universal films start with that big Universal fanfare.
Sure.
And there's that, and there's, you know, Star Wars and Star Trek and all of the, you know, sci-fi movies that you watch when you're, you know, 12 and 13-year-old kid. You know, the horn is really, really prominent.
So fast forward through junior high to a certain point in high school, you've practiced, you've gotten to be really good, and then our paths intertwined for the first point.
Right. Our paths, I think, intertwined for the first point at the youth orchestra audition, and I wandered into the elevator, and I think we were in the elevator at the same time going downstairs to the basement.
We were, huh?
Yeah, and I didn't.
This was the San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra, I should point out. That was where our position was, and that's what you joined. What were you, a junior or no, a sophomore maybe?
I think I was a sophomore at the audition. Yeah, if I remember right.
So in fact, you and I share quite a long history together, not just through the Marin Symphony, but obviously before that.
It's been a long time. No, it's. I was, and I think we talked about this the last time I was up there. I think it was Shostakovich 10 was the last time I was up there, but I think we, you know, it's like, it's really interesting to have this level of this long of a history together, because I always know what you're going to do.
Well, I'm glad you know, because sometimes I'm not sure myself. But
well, ask me, I'll tell you.
Would you? I would certainly help me out. I just need to know which one does.
In all seriousness, you know, it's good to have that and to kind of understand, like, you know, there's sort of overarching principles, and every conductor and every horn player are going to bring their own energy to the table, and you know, it's nice to have that, like, you know what to expect from someone.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think all of us that have gone on to become professional musicians realize in the rearview mirror that youth orchestra is an incredibly important part of our education growing up. Is there something in particular that you took away from being in the San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra that helped you in your professional career?
Well, what I understand is pretty unique about that institution is that, you know, we shared the same stage and the same concert hall as the big orchestra. Yeah. And that, for a horn player, is a really, really important lesson to learn. You know, because we have this challenge of, you know, of our instrument pointing the wrong way and not being able ever to actually hear our own sound in the context of the orchestra, because it's overpowering up close because we're pointing the wrong way. And to play in a, you know, 2,500 seat auditorium or concert hall is a very different experience than playing in, you know, the band room at your high school. The color of the sound is different. The intensity of the sound, the nature of articulations, lengths of notes, phrasing, everything has to be bigger and more exaggerated. And, you know, to learn those lessons so early on is really, really helpful, because, you know, getting out of, you know, going through school and back into going through conservatory, and we had a very, I mean, you remember, we had a very tiny concert hall at the old conservatory. You know, and then out into regional orchestras with halls of every shape and size imaginable, and then to this Fox Theater that we have in San Diego. Like, yeah, I've seen all these different concert halls before. I know what to do, but I had that just the the infrastructure of it was so formative, and the coaching of it, to be able to go and, you know, I would go every Saturday and sit in my teacher's chair, my teacher's spot on the stage, and, with the same chairs and the same stands and the same audience, the same concert hall staring back at me. And, as a 16-year-old, that was a very intimidating, but also very empowering thing,
Mm-hmm.
to say, oh, maybe I can actually do this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fascinating. I've always loved the idea of youth orchestras, but on two parallel tracks, because regardless of whether you're going to be a professional musician or not, they're tremendously valuable things. I would argue at least as important for those that decide not to be musicians, because they teach us life lessons. Playing in an orchestra, a young person teaches us how to become part of something that's bigger than ourselves, something that we need to respect the people that are around us, to listen to them, to be sensitive, to be disciplined and focused. These are all great lessons for whatever we end up doing. So I just love the idea of this wonderful network of youth orchestras all over the Bay Area, and beyond in this country. I think is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Now you have a little one of your own. A little too early to decide whether they're going to become a future musician or not. But how are things working out for that? I still, I look at you, and as everybody knows, I've known you since you were about 15, and now you have a kid of your own. So tell us about fatherhood.
It is the single most challenging, most difficult, and most entertaining thing I've ever done. My daughter she'll be 3 next month. So she's, she had just started preschool last year. So the last 4 months have been very, very difficult around here, trying to kind of balance the time. My wife works at home and runs her own business. So, we're trying to split. At first we tried to split the childcare down the middle, but with me not rehearsing or performing, I'm taking more than half of the childcare. I don't know. I couldn't put a number on it, a percentage, but no, it has been the most amazing thing I've ever done. She can make a sound on the horn already. She's not 3 yet.
You're serious?
I would have to ask permission from the family to put the video up. We have a very strict no child's face on social media for Facebook's algorithms and everything, and shadow profiles and all of those terrible things.
Fair enough.
Do.
I'll take your word for it. But that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I set the horn on the table and she walks up to it and makes and she's not faking it. She's actually buzzing. So now I'm looking at trying to find her a very a miniaturized single F horn to learn on. Yeah, I mean, there's there are a few kids in the orchestra down here who are the few parents with kids who are learning their parents' instrument. So it's I look at that with great anxiety.
Yeah, I wonder about that. You may have mixed feelings about that, but for the time being, she's still not quite 3, so you don't really have to worry about that too much.
Down the road a ways.
Yeah.
We're trying to make sure that she, we're trying to make sure that she's a kind person that cares about other people and sees her role in a collective society, and that she's and that she respects people and cares for people, and that's what we're working on right now. And
beautiful.
Potty training this week too. So.
Yeah, we can't ignore that either. No. Well, listen, to bring us back into the musical sphere for one moment before this interview gets the best of me, you're very kindly going to share a little bit of music and your artistry with us as part of this. Tell us a little bit about what you are going to be playing.
Well, I will have to rewind just a little bit on that. So when things got very bad and very real in March, one of the things that the that a lot of orchestras started asking their players for is they said, hey, can you give us something that we can put online? Can you give us something that we can put on Facebook, that we can email to our donors, to our patrons, to say, hey, we're still here, please help us, we need your help, and to say, look, our musicians still want to play and still want to make the art. And back in my freelance days, I had done these multi-track recordings just for fun, just for myself. I never shared them with anyone. I thought they were silly. I used them just as a means of like proofreading horn ensemble arrangements. And so I found this collection of canzonas and sonatas from Giovanni Gabrieli, who died in 1612. And this publication was made in 1615, 3 years after his death. And these pieces are written for anywhere from 5 to, I think, 20 voices. And I had been seeing a lot of other orchestras and a lot of other players making these videos and doing these things with mixed levels of quality and video and audio production. And I said, well, hey, I'm good at photography. I'm pretty good at recording. I'm pretty good at arranging, and I'm pretty adequate at playing the horn. So I should be able to make something pretty good. And it kind of took off. It became something to do and something to kind of keep myself in shape and keep my chops up. Because, I mean, we don't know when we'll be able to play all together again under normal circumstances, and I had to do something. And this music is incredible. So what I've given the Marin Symphony here is Canzone 9 from the 1615 collection. It's for 8 voices, and in this video I'm actually playing 3 different instruments and I think 4 different mouthpieces. Just to try to get a little bit different tone color and things so that it's not too same homogeneous. The top voices are on an old Alexander Descant. The middle voices are on the old, this C.F. Schmidt that used to belong to a player in the Pittsburgh Symphony. And this is the horn that I think I won my job on in Marin, the horn that I played when I was in the Bay Area all the time. And then the bottom voices are on my Carl Hill double, which is my normal symphony horn.
And this was music that was originally written to be performed in St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes. Should we transport ourselves back in our imagination to St. Mark's Cathedral? Would that help?
Maybe a little bit. And I think the really interesting thing to keep in mind about Gabrieli is one of the first composers to write specifically for brass instruments. Yeah. Groups of cornetos and sackbuts. And for anyone not familiar with those instruments, the trombone, I think, today bears the most resemblance to its former self. It's the sackbut and the trombone are not really, really different. But the other instruments are. The cornetto, which arguably is related to the trumpet, was a woodwind instrument with a brass mouthpiece on the end of it with 7 finger holes. Our old friend Kyle Covington actually owns one of these things, along with serpents and sackbuts and other funny gizmos. So a lot of his music was actually written for specific instruments. This collection is not so much specified. He was a little more open-ended, so you would find more things like collections of violins and cornetos and sackbuts, and then an organ, a little Renaissance organ playing the bass parts. So, this gives me kind of a chance to kind of wring the horn out and like squeeze all the little different colors and textures out of the horn that I can.
Well, it sounds delicious. A nice treat for us to be able to enjoy at the end of the week. So thank you for that, as well as the chance to chat with you. It's great to see you after too long, and I hope we're able to make music back on stage together as soon as possible. But in the meantime, thanks for being with us, and take care of yourself.
Thanks. You too.